You're going to learn 7 critical chess concepts on how to attack your opponent's king that you can start applying to your games today. All of these concepts came from a single game played between 2 strong grandmasters in the Tata Steel Tournament 2024. This is an ongoing tournament right now with the top players in the world. This game was played in round 1. It was Grandmaster Jan Nepomniachtchi playing against Grandmaster Max Warmerdam with white pieces. And we're going to see exactly how Jan orchestrated an attack on the king. I'm going to give you a chance to pause, try to think what would you play, and if that is correct or not, and why not. And this is going to be a very practical lesson. So let's go ahead and get started. And actually, I'm going to show you from the very beginning how we ended up here very quickly, but we're primarily going to focus on this position right here. Okay, so Jan Nepomniachtchi is playing as black, and he goes into a queen's gambit. He transposes, so it doesn't start as a queen's gambit, but we end up there. This is something that grandmasters do all the time. They start with one opening, and then they kind of switch to a different opening, and then maybe they switch to another opening. Nothing really shocking there. And he plays this interesting move, b5. If you notice, that pawn can actually just be captured. But if white did that, then white would lose their e4 pawn because the knight no longer defends. So white instead says, well, I'll just push that pawn first, and then I'll grab the pawn, which makes sense. And now Jan comes back here, and you might look at this and go, what is he doing? He's got his pawns all messed up. This doesn't look like a great opening. And maybe it's not, but when you're a top grandmaster, you can study these lines, you can use the engine to help you, you look at past games, and you can basically play whatever you want in the opening phase of the game because you've studied all the different options. And that's kind of what's going on here, most likely. So don't really need to overanalyze this. I'm just kind of letting you know what I think is happening. So everybody develops their pieces, and then Jan, at some point here, decides to castle queenside. Okay, and then white, a few moves later, castles kingside. Here we go. This is really where the game starts to get into the critical moments. Okay, now when you look at the castling here, my first thought was like, this actually looks like a pretty safe place for white's king because lots of black's pieces are on the other side of the board, right? Like literally over here. How are you going to attack the king? However, there is the half open file. Whenever you have a half open file on a king, you always want to ask yourself, does it make sense to attack that king? Because your rooks can easily access the file. Okay, and that's exactly what is happening here. So before I tell you what move was played next, I'll go ahead and tell you, Jan played one of these 2 rooks to g8 to attack the king. Which rook do you think he played? And this actually brings us to our first concept, which is choose your rook carefully. Which one do you think he played? All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, he actually played this rook. And the computer doesn't like it. The computer wanted some other ideas to happen. But let's just ignore Stockfish for a minute and think about this from practical standpoint of why did he choose this rook? Whenever you're trying to make a decision about which rook to use, you always want to ask yourself the question, what is most likely to happen in like the next 5 or 10 moves? Like just generally speaking, what do I think is going to happen in the next couple of moves? And what Jan is saying is, well, I'm building the pressure here on g2. I've got my bishop lined up. I think at some point this is going to be a big threat for me. And probably white's going to have to do something like g3 maybe. And I'm going to want to attack that with this pawn, something like this, maybe trade it. And I want this rook to be involved here. That is why I'm choosing to leave that rook there because I'm anticipating this is going to happen, right? If he would have been thinking, no, you know what? I think there's going to be some stuff happening on the d file. I need this rook to be here. He probably would have used this rook. But that's not what he's anticipating is going to happen in the game, so he plans accordingly. And this is very, very important. You don't just randomly grab a rook, it doesn't matter, I'll just use this one, who cares? No, like, try to think what is going to happen in the next couple of moves, and then choose the right rook, okay? So that's what happened here. Let's see what happened next. g3, next move. So he does immediately react and try to stop, the pressure on g2 by pushing the pawn forward, which it does accomplish, but now you have to start thinking about the bishop. Okay, this brings us to our next concept. Actually, first, he does play h5, getting ready to attack, and then white blockades that with the rook. So if you were to play h4 now, he's going to simply just take it. And yes, you could take, and yes, he could take, but he's kind of dealt with the initial attack there. So Jan plays a different move here. If you would like to pause, what do you think he played? This brings us to our second concept. If you had a chance to look at that, the second concept is turn a bad piece into a good piece. And so what Jan does is plays the move queen to c6. See, the queen was sitting over here not really doing anything. You're not going to take this pawn. You don't really need it here. Like, what is it? You can't attack the king with it over here. So he says, all right, that's my worst piece. I'm going to make it one of my better pieces. And he creates a very powerful queen and bishop battery. And yes, there are some pieces in the way, but if these knights were to magically disappear, the game would be over. There's checkmate. So you can see how now all of a sudden this is a big deal. This is a very powerful threat. So turn one of your bad pieces into one of your good pieces. Okay, that's concept number 2. Let's see how white responds. He plays rook to h4. He's trying to totally shut down this pawn from being able to move forward. He doesn't want this rook to become involved in the game. This brings us to our third concept. And before I tell you what that is, what do you think Jan played next? You got a chance to look at that. He traded the knight for the bishop. And he's not doing this just because he wants to trade, because he likes trading pieces. He's doing this because he wants to open the diagonal. Okay, this is concept number 3. When you're trying to attack, you have to open the key diagonals and the key files so that your pieces can get to the king, right? That's all he's doing. He's like, look, I'm going to get rid of that primarily because my knight is blocking this powerful battery. I need that to be more effective. And now there's only one piece in the way, so it's much more likely that there could be a checkmate here if this knight can be removed. Okay, so let's keep going. What do you think Jan played next to continue his attack? Well, if you had a chance to look at that, he played the move rook to g4, and this is kind of in the same, line of thinking as what I just mentioned. He's trying to clear either the diagonal or the file, and the way that he's going to do that is by taking this rook. Right, and I think that's actually what happened in the game. Queen came over, and then he did take the rook. And what is he doing by doing? He's forcing one of these pieces to move. Otherwise, you just lose a rook, right? If the knight moves, he's cleared this diagonal. The queen can come in, and it's all over for white. Check, check. It's a fork. You're going to lose your knight. Your king is running, and white's going to lose. So white is obligated to capture with the pawn. And look at this. He has cleared the file now. So he traded the knight to partially clear the diagonal. Now he's traded this rook. And again, he's not doing this just because he likes trading. He's clearing out the files and the diagonals to get at the king. There's a very specific reason for why he wanted to trade that. Okay, and now you can see the rook is about to come in. And by the way, if you're wondering if white would have traded here instead of move the queen, that's obviously not going to be good either, because now the pawn is going to force the knight to move, which is going to clear that diagonal, and the rook is already involved. And so white, I believe, was trying to get the queen involved, wants to go to c3 and attack stuff like this. So that's why they moved over here. Okay. All right. So Jan does trade this, opens up the file. And then the question that I asked on the thumbnail for this video, yes or no? Do you think Jan played this move now? That's the question. Pause and answer that if you would like. All right. Well, if you had a chance to look at that, this brings us to our next concept, which is don't allow the king an escape route. Now, I don't just mean like you're trying to checkmate. Of course, the king can't have places to move. I mean an escape route. So as you're attacking, don't allow the king a clear path to get away. So in this position, if Jan did not play this, by the way, that's the answer. No, he didn't. If he would have played this move, white is going to go king f2. And notice how there's this kind of path to just run away and just get away from all of the crazy attack that's happening here, right? If this happened, there's not really a great follow-up here for black. So what does he do instead? He plays the move knight to b3. Now, this is combining two of the concepts that we've talked about. Number one, he's trying to turn one of his bad pieces into a good piece, but he's also thinking about this new concept of not allowing the king an escape route, and he's planning to relocate his knight to right here. Because imagine if the knight is sitting here, there is no king f2, and when you play check, now the king is forced in the corner, which is very, very bad. So he noticed that, okay, I can use my knight to do that. And oh, by the way, it's a tempo on the queen too, even better. Do you see how important that is to not allow the king an escape route? Okay, so the queen moves, he grabs the pawn, and notice if the king ever tries to do this now, you're just walking into a fork. So he's got it defended tactically, okay? All right, let's see. Oh, yeah, we can keep going until the next point. So white captures this, and now you can probably figure out what he played next if you would like to pause. You had a chance to look at that. He did indeed play the check now, because now if you play king f2, you walk right into the fork, right? And of course, if you were thinking that he would have played here first, you know, the rook is under attack. You can't do that, okay? So he waits for the right moment. There is no escape route for the king because of the tactic, which is exactly what he wants, forces the king into the corner. Of course, you can't block the check because you need that knight to stop this checkmate. So king h1 really is the only move here for white. All right, if you would like to pause, what do you think he played next? And this brings us to our next concept. All right, well, if you had a chance to look at that, the next concept is increase the pressure. And what I mean by that is right now, black has a pretty nice position. You've got the rook here. You've got the battery lined up. That's great. Your knight's in a pretty decent position. But there's no immediate tactic. There's no like, I'm going to take something and then I'm going to get checkmate. There's just nothing immediately there, even though the position is great. So what does he do? He plays a move that just adds even more pressure onto white. The move is queen to e4. He keeps his battery, so he still has all of those threats. He defends, you know, both of these pawns, but he's also attacking this and this, and just centralizing his queen to control all of these different squares, right? And so he's increasing the pressure without letting up any of his other threats. And a lot of times this is what you have to do, right? There's not an immediate tactic, but you don't want to just do something crazy and give up your advantage, right? He doesn't like go nuts and like, I'm going to just sack the rook because I got to just keep doing something. No, like he's just like, look, my position is good. I'm just going to make it a little bit better with queen to e4. That's it. All right, let's see what happens. Rook to g1. And now we get to our next concept. What do you think Jan played next? If you had a chance to look at that, concept number 6 is don't trade unless you have a tactic. So when you're attacking, usually trading is going to make it easier on your opponent unless you have a very specific reason or a specific tactic that you want to accomplish. So if you remember earlier in the game, he did make a few trades, but they had very specific reasons. This one, he unleashed his queen and bishop. That knight was blocking them. He needed to get that out of the way. That's why he traded. Here, why did he trade? Because it opened up the G file. Again, a very specific reason that helped him to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish. So now we go forward a little bit more. We have another option to trade. But do you think he did it? The answer is no. And why not? Because trading now, it doesn't really help him. Yes, you could go for this line. You could take here with check. The king's going to move. But what do you do next? I mean, it's still a decent position for black, but not nearly as good as what happened in the game. Okay? And what did he do instead? He brings the rook over here. And as soon as he played this move, actually, white resigned because the position is so good for black. And this is a hard move for a lot of beginners to play, right? Most beginners will be like, oh yeah, I'll just trade and I'll take a pawn. But Jan is saying, no. I don't have a really powerful tactic. I don't have a great follow-up. I need something better. I'm not going to trade that. Now, let's talk about what exactly is the point of this move. This is where it gets a little bit advanced. This is where working on your tactics is going to help a lot. This brings us into the final concept. Concept number 7 is that when you get into these great positions, you still need a final blow. You need something that's just going to put the nail in the coffin, so to speak, finish off the game. And that is what rook to d8 does. So as an example, let's say white were to have played, I don't know, queen f4, just saying, look, I'm going to try to trade queens. What are you going to do? Well, now you can see the idea. He wants to trade. And remember, he's not just trading to trade. He's trading now because he has a specific idea. What's the specific idea? If you'd like to pause, see if you can figure it out. It has to do with the rook being on d8. If you had a chance to do that, the move is rook to d2. And again, a very advanced concept here, but what he's taking advantage of is the knight is pinned. I'm attacking this bishop, and white has no way to deal with this threat. Because remember, the bishop is defending the knight. So if you move it away, you lose this and you lose the game. If you try to go back here, he's got a final tactic as well. What is the move here? That's correct. Rook takes d1 and then the fork. And he's coming out 2 pieces up. So you can't go there. And if you try to defend, let's just say like this, same exact thing. He's going to sacrifice it, leads to the same thing. And this way he only comes out 1 piece, but it's still good enough. And there's no way for white to defend, right? There's just no way. This is the threat and you can't deal with it. There's just nothing you can do. So the point is, he didn't trade. He went for a more powerful move, which set up the follow-up blow, Rook to D2, to finish off the game. Okay? And it's advanced, but this is why you have to learn your tactics. This is why you have to be patient. Don't just immediately go for a trade and take a pawn. Look for something more powerful. Okay? And those are the 7 concepts. This is an actual practical example. You can start applying these things in your games today. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know if you like this kind of video and you'd like to see more game recaps with specific concepts that you can take away. Let me know, and that will encourage me to make more of these. If the feedback is not good, then I will probably just stop. So that's how you guys can communicate to me if you like this. Thank you guys. I'll see you next time. Stay sharp, play smart, and take care.